Welcome to The Rebound with Coach Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound. I'm Matt Doherty. Today, I have the privilege of sitting down with one of Charlotte's most respected entrepreneurs, Jim Noble. Known for his excellence in the kitchen, success in business, and heart for serving others, Jim has built a legacy that reaches far beyond food. From Noble Smoke to Roosters, his journey is one of passion, purpose, and perseverance. Let's dive in. Jim, take us back to the beginning. What was the spark that led you into the restaurant business?
Well, I was in the nightclub business before. Going back to my days in Raleigh, NC State, you probably remember Crazy Zach's.
That's yours?
That was me and two of my fraternity brothers and a cab sig and his dad.
Are you kidding me?
We were there when we opened up Raleigh. It caused my senior year in college to extend another year. And then we opened North Myrtle Beach, then Athens, Georgia. Then me and two of my fraternity brothers left that and went to Clemson and opened up Bullwinkle's in 1980. And just in time for Danny Ford and the national championship at Clemson, which is kind of cool because my freshman year at State was when David Thompson was there. We won the national championship.
Wait a second. Wait. We don't have to. This is not an NC State Wolfpack, like alumni endorsement show here. Just know your audience. I am a Tar Heel, a proud Tar Heel.
You are. And so is my wife. She graduated about the same time you did, I think.
So you married up, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And my sister went there too. So, you know.
So let's back up. Crazy Zach's, North Myrtle Beach.
Yep.
1984, I lost my wallet in Crazy Zach's, North Myrtle Beach, and I had about $400 in it. We were barnstorming back then. Can you check Lost and Found for me? That thing ever show up?
Well, you know, I had left probably 4 years before that. We had gone to Clemson to open up Bullwinkle's. And,
oh, gosh. Wow.
But being in the nightclub business around, at college was a lot of fun, but I knew that it was not a long-term thing for me. I had a grandmother, strong believer, who tried to come visit us at Clemson to come see our cafe one day, and she couldn't get in because the doors were like it was a home football game. We were going to open up probably about 6 or 7 o'clock. Good for me that she didn't come because she'd have been upset with me for having a bar instead of a cafe. So. While I was in Clemson, I was trying to open up some restaurants, and we were looking at moving and doing a Bullwinkle's in Charleston, and I was going to do a restaurant down there. And there really weren't many restaurants in Charleston back in 1980, 81 at all. So being in the bar business and it's such a fickle business, a bar business, that you could be doing everything right, and everybody decides to go to another bar. So I wanted to do something that's more self-sustaining. So I started looking at doing restaurants. So that's how.
Let me back up. This is mind-boggling. This is why I love what I do. I get to ask questions, and all of a sudden, I have this plan. It's like as a basketball coach, you have a game plan, and then somebody gets hot, or somebody gets in foul trouble, or somebody gets hurt, and then you got to pivot, and that's a basketball term, but also a business term, and also a media term. So let's pivot here, Jim. You are known as a Christian in the Charlotte community, and you were in the nightclub business. So talk to me about your faith as a young man being in the nightclub business. Obviously that, sometimes doesn't seem like it's a good marriage. And then you go into the restaurant business. Talk about your faith and being in the nightclub business and then pivoting to the restaurant business.
Well, I really wasn't walking with the Lord while I was in college or in the bar business or when I first opened the restaurant. It was probably later on when my wife and I got married, we started going back to church. And as we went through some tough things in life, that's when we turned. But back then I knew one thing that I didn't want Jesus to come back right then. I said, don't come back right now because I'm not in a good spot. So
you might not be called up. You might be down. Your club might be full, but your grandmother would be raptured, right?
Yeah.
That's an awesome story. So how old were you when you got married and then kind of started your walk with the Lord?
Yeah, I was 33 in 1988. We opened the first restaurant in High Point in 83. Prior to that, though, when I was in high school, I was a strong believer, and I was involved with Young Life and a lot of that. And then went off to college. Just when I started goofing off and partying a lot, and probably, I thought I was God's gift to women, but I realized I was not when I got a little older. But when we got married, is when we started going back to church. And in '98, when we had our first daughter was born that same year, and we just started. I was just punching the church clock, and till we went through some tragedies in our life, and then we turned toward the Lord, and with some expectations of hope based upon what His promises are that I never knew were there before. I'd read it, but I never saw some of the things He said. So I was going to tell you about getting in the restaurant business.
Well, I'm gonna interrupt, if you don't mind. I'm listening for the audience, and when they say tragedies, a lot of times when people face hard times, they feel like, oh, if there was a God, I wouldn't be here, right? Other people feel like tough times brought me to my knees. What do we need to do when we're on our knees but pray? So if you don't mind sharing, what was the tragedy that brought you kind of to your knees to the point where you prayed for grace?
Absolutely. We got married. We had our first daughter. It's the easiest thing in the world. Then we had 4 miscarriages right up to that. And then our daughter Olivia was born, perfectly normal. And at 2 weeks old, she got encephalitis and she almost died. Every organ was shutting down, and things got pretty bad. And she was in the hospital at 2 weeks old for 4 weeks. The first 6 weeks of her life, she spent 4 in the hospital, and the prognosis was not good, but we didn't really know. We did it for the next 10, 11 months. We did everything we knew how to do for her. Went down to the University Chapel Hill Hospital and got a second opinion. It was worse than the first, and we were totally devastated. And about that time, people began to put books and tapes anonymously in our mailbox. We were living on a farm that we were renting while we were building a farm and a house on the farm. It was words of encouragement that you could trust God, that nothing's impossible with God. And my wife started listening first. I would come home from work and she's listening to Christian music. I said, man, she's flipped out on me now. Then I began to listen to some of these things, and the message and the promises of God sounded too good to be true.
Right.
And just like I'd done in the restaurant business, I knew if I wanted to really find out the truth, I could study it for myself. Because I taught myself how to cook. I never went to culinary school. I began to read Julia Child and books of Escoffier, and started buying equipment cooking equipment for French cuisine. And I taught myself how to make bread through books. So I said, if this is true, if this really is true that God has promises that you can walk out by faith, I'll prove it to myself. And I began to study the Word of God probably around February of '94, and I've never stopped, and it was better than I ever thought. I mean, there were things in there in the Word of God that I'd never seen before. And as I began to unfold them, my goodness, I've been raised in the church all my life. I've had Bibles since my grandparents were giving them to me. My dad's father was a Pentecostal holiness preacher who, as it would be, he was miraculously healed when he was about 15 years old in Eastern North Carolina, and then came into the ministry and went to preach. And he used to say, I would just soon somebody slapped me in the face and asked me my name, because he stuttered so bad. But when the Lord called him to preach, he said, Lord, don't call me, call my brother. He said, don't worry about your brother. Just do what I did. The first day he preached, he never stuttered again. And then my mom's family was raised Pilgrim Holiness. So we were raised in a Christian background. But as we began to look at the Word of God, it's amazing what you can find if you look for it instead of just going through the motions. But we began to find promises from God. And one of them in particular is, if you can believe, all things are possible. So we began to read about what God said and what His promises are, what His covenant's about, and what the new covenant's about. So it radically changed our life. And when I began to read about this God that I thought I knew, He was better than I ever thought. And I knew I'd spend the rest of my life telling people, don't give up, no matter where you are. One of our outreaches is to the homeless population in this town. And a lot of them have gotten to a point in life, they just like, there's no hope for me. I'm going to be in the street all my life. And I'm saying, nope. If you believe that, you will. But if you'll find out what God says about you, and if you pursue what he has in your life and what his desires are for you, if you can see yourself as God sees you, it'll change your life. So we begin to tell people, and we still do it every day.
I just want to pause right there and let that sink in. Like, that's a drop the mic moment. Powerful. And we all go on that path. I think about mine. I was Irish Catholic church, altar boy, go off to college. My mother, I'm from Long Island, and she said, I'm worried about you going down south to college because you might lose your faith. And Dean Smith assured her that I would go to church. We call it mass.
Yeah.
And, down south, you call it church, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I did. I lost my way, kind of like you did. And through failure, I got on my knees, and my wife, my daughter, and some other friends, when I was at Dallas, talked about Jesus. And, really you just have to say that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, died on the cross for my sins, and you're saved. And I'm like, that's easy. Like, that's kind of easy. The Catholic Church, I felt like you had to jump through a lot of hoops. And, there's a comedian that talks about growing up Catholic, and like, you were led to believe that there's Jesus and God are too busy to talk to you. You have to go through other people.
Yeah.
And when I heard that you could go direct, it was very freeing. And so, like all of us, we're work in progress, but that's powerful that you found that through your hardship and your wife and people and your determination.
Yeah. It's amazing how much more we learn through failures and tough times than we do successes.
Yeah. OMJ Clothing is an elite men's clothing store that provides a vast array of spectacular brands of men's lifestyle apparel for every day. Elevate your business upscale casual at OMJ. Success comes from standing out.
And
Let's talk. How do you, especially in today's day, how do you weave your faith into your business without risk of losing employees and losing customers?
Well, it's really who I am, and I don't say it's a Christian business. My business can get saved, but we're a business that runs on Christian principles, and we employ all walks of life. And there's one group that really thinks I don't like them, which is just not true. I mean, some of the wait staff I used to have in High Point, I ran into some of them a couple of years ago, and they said, and it was these girls who were doing some business and selling some things now. And they said, "Why were you prejudiced against us? You made us work downstairs. You let the gay guys work upstairs." I said, "Because they were better. They were better servers than y'all." I mean, I don't discriminate on people's that come and join with us. Now, we do have a culture that you need to live by. And if you don't live by a culture, that's not it's not a faith-based culture. It is based on principles of godly living. But we're going to treat people right. We're going to live the golden rule. We honor families. We give to restore. These are things that anyone can get involved with, and we just really care about people. And in the restaurant side, on the ministry side too, but our staff is our number one asset, and there's people from all walks of life there. When Jesus walked, not everybody believed what he said, but he still treated them all with great compassion. He had two of them that came to him that the churchy people would say, "You don't be talking to her like the woman at the well who had 5 husbands. Now the one she's living with, shacking up with now, is not her husband." And she got some of the greatest revelation from him about what worship is like. And then the woman that came in with an alabaster flask, and they said, "This woman's a sinner." But Jesus said, "Yeah, but because of her worship, people be talking about her as long as this gospel is preached throughout this whole earth." And these two people that most society would cast aside, he was able to minister to them and love them. He didn't hold their past against them. He was trying to reach into their heart and help them get their lives right. And he didn't agree with their lifestyle, but he loved them. I don't always agree with everybody's lifestyle. My wife didn't agree with all my lifestyle, but she doesn't leave me, and I don't always agree. And then people say, "Well, what do you believe?" I say, "Well, I believe what God says." It's not me. It's not my opinion. It's what God says. And But he also said, go preach the gospel, help those that are in need. And, we've got believers in need of help. And I really do just try to, I have to walk this walk. And if you look at Jesus and how many people he moved through and how many were moved by him, but some of them weren't moved by him, and he didn't reach them all. But yet he tried, and he cared as much for the ones that didn't listen as the ones that did. And so that's the same way we have to live.
Right.
There's 2 commands he gave us that are the top 2. And he said, if you did these, you wouldn't have to do anything else. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then he said, love your fellow man as yourself. Not your fellow believer, but your fellow man. That means everyone encounter, even the ones that mistreat us or hate us, you got to love them. You got to love them. And how we forgive them is how God forgives us. So I can't hold any unforgiveness against anyone if they don't agree with me or I don't agree with them. I have to still walk in love. So, and that doesn't mean I'm gonna, I condone any activity. People ask me, I say, this is what God says, and I was among the biggest sinners. So how can I ever condemn someone? God doesn't condemn; He tries to convict the heart just for transformation. So that's the way we should live. He's our Lord. We're disciples of Christ. That means we discipline ourselves to be like Him, and our goal should be to be like Him and walk like Him and love like Him, forgive like Him.
So your culture. I'm big on culture. Big on core values. You talked about your principles, treat people right, the golden rule. What were the other principles?
Healthy growth and pouring into others, leadership. If they join our team, we should pour into them from a leadership perspective so that when they leave this organization, they're better off than when they came. We want to help people grow, and giving back to our community is a huge part of it.
Yep.
There's one particular scripture that kind of sums up all of it, and it's Proverbs. It's from the Passion Translation. I think it's 23. I'll check it to be sure, but it says, wise people are builders, and they build families, businesses, and communities. And through intelligence and insight, their enterprises are established and they endure. Wise people are builders. They build families, businesses, and communities. A lot of times people build businesses at the sake of their families or the sake of their community, but that's not the godly principle. To build families, businesses, and communities. And as you build into a community, as you build your business should be building into the community and bringing good to your community. We shouldn't be coming into places and sucking the money out of it. We should be pouring back into where we're being blessed. So that's that's kind of how we run our business. Treat others like we want to be treated.
A lot of people listening or watching this show are business owners, entrepreneurs. They all have a hard time finding talent. And I know it's probably even harder in the restaurant business. How do you attract talent? How do you hold talent accountable to these principles? And how do you retain talent?
Well, it's a tough market. I think the American work ethic suffered during COVID, and a lot of people don't want to work like they used to want to work. I never changed. I went to work every day just like it was like normal. But when this happened, we kind of hunkered down and turned internally and really did work on our culture and our values and what do we do to when our vision at Noble's Restaurants is to be among the best restaurants in the Southeast, known for 2 things. 1, being a great place to work, and 2, giving back to their communities. You can create a great place to work if you want to, and you attract people that have the same type ideals that you do. If you don't, they probably don't want to stick around. But we decided that we're going to make ourselves and our culture the number one thing that we do going forward. I'm in the people business. We just happen to sell food.
Right.
And everybody's in the people business. If you're in some kind of business, you're in the people business. Whatever you do is really secondary to the fact that you're working helping people. There's 2 businesses you don't want to be in if you don't want to serve people. One's ministry, and one's in the restaurant business, because you're always about serving someone else at the expense of your own personal interests at the time. And when we hunkered down and we had that one room, at South Park, it's a private room. We call it the cellar. It seats about 20. It's a long table.
Yeah.
right beside the wine cellar. That became our war room during COVID. And we just said, what are we going to do to make ourselves attractive for work? We didn't know it was going to get so bad to find people, but if you decide that you are, and you become a great employer, and you do the best, let's say you get in the top 40 or 30% as far as great places to work. Well, the vast majority are going to try to be there anyway. So you get ahead of the game by doing what you can to take care of those that would show up and when they would join you when they do show up. So if you go to a place and half the people work great and half the people don't work great, if you can attract the ones that work great, you're okay. There's a lot of people that don't always push for excellence, so it makes it easier for us to find people. But I think it's intentional, and we didn't just make our team the number one target for our business to make them raving fans of what we do, just to make it sound good. It really is what we intended to do, because if I take care of my team, they're going to take care of their people. And I can't touch every table. I can't touch every table when we only had one restaurant. People say, why you keep opening more? Isn't it hard? I said, well, one was impossible. So it's not that much different if you build the right team. And it's all about teamwork. It's all right, the right place. It's about holding people accountable too. I mean, you got to hold people accountable.
How do you, that was my next question. You have some people you recruit to your culture, and then they're not doing, they're not treating people right. They're not demonstrating the golden rule. How do you hold them accountable?
We'll go through 2 or 3 steps of correction. And if you do it correctly, they really fire themselves, because you've done it. Say, hey, look, I'm working with you, but this is how we got to do this. You can't be mean to people. You got to be nice to people, et cetera. And now, if this happens again, we're going to sit down one more time. But if it happens a third time, you're going to have to part ways. And if they know up front how you feel and what you expect, and then you can't let some people get away with it and some people not. You got to be consistent with everybody. Mm-hmm. And once you know that, then they really fire themselves, or they check out, because you've given them all the tools you can to be successful. I mean, if somebody does something, we try to help them excel and become excellent in all they do, and we push them for that. We're not trying to get rid of people, man. We're looking for people.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier to keep one than it is to lose one and start over again.
That's right. It's costly, right? It's usually 3x their salary.
Yeah. I think our turnover rate in the last year is somewhere between 30 and 40%, with a national average probably 80%. So wow. I think if you're intentional about your culture, I mean, no matter what business you're in, you're gonna have a culture. It's whether you decide what it's going to be, or you're going to let somebody else decide what it's going to be. So
that's right.
And once you set your culture, people that come that don't agree or align with that culture, they're not going to be comfortable anyway. And a lot of times they'll check out.
That's right. That's right. How do you find
the ball team? I mean,
yeah,
you got to give them, you got to let them play, but at the same time, you got to give them guidance and stuff.
Well, that all starts in the interview process. I remember when Dean Smith came to my home and recruited me for North Carolina. He basically talked about the core values of play hard, play smart, play together, and how freshmen have to wait their turn.
Yeah.
He told me, and I was a high school All-American, that I'd be lucky to play by the time I'm a junior. And I leaned into that. I understood that. I liked that. I respected that. And I also embraced the challenge. I was a 6th man as a freshman, started as a sophomore. And I talked to other players that I played against that were high school All-Americans that were recruited by Dean Smith. And he said the same thing to them in their home visits. And I remember one player who was a great player. He said, man, he said, I was having none of that. And so, and I look back and I showed him my ring from that. We were undefeated against them. My 4 years, except once, I think we lost one time at their place over 4 years. And they had talent, but that's where the character shows up, right? So you recruit to it. Now it's easier to train to it and easier to retain to it. Not everyone's a fit for Noble's, your restaurants.
Yeah. John Maxwell wrote a book called Talent is Never Enough. And that's exactly true. You can have the best 5 ball players in the country, but if you don't have a good coach, you're not going to go so far. But you can have some really good ball players and a great coach, and you can change the world. So
yeah. Well, I talk about this on this show quite a bit. I call it the organizational triangle with talent, systems and culture, where culture is king, because you could have great talent and great systems, but if you don't have a good culture, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And when I talk about that, the person that comes to mind is Jim Valvano, because Coach Valvano in 1983 had, let's say, average talent. He didn't have an All-American on that team. He had average systems. Their plays were not very complicated, but he had an elite culture. And those players would literally go through a wall for him. And that's why they won a national championship in 83.
I'll tell you a story on Dean Smith. I went to Carolina basketball school when I was in probably maybe 7th, 8th grade, something like that. And I really wasn't. I played football. I really wasn't much of a basketball player, and I realized that probably in middle school. But I really tried hard. I would always give it my best. And I remember one of the 5th days of that weekly with Dean Smith, and on day 5, he said, "Noble," he says, and he said this in front of the people, and I didn't even know he knew my name. And I think he had a real great call for people's names, and he said, "You really try hard, and I just want you to know, I want to encourage you." And I really admired Dean Smith. Of course, I went to state, but he's an unbelievable man. When he retired, and his family, some of his daughters down here in Charlotte, he would come into Nobles all the time, and I get to talk to him and just tell him how much I appreciate what he did. And I remember when they honored him. He was just a heck of a guy, and I can't tell you more than you do. And I'm sure you applaud him, but all schools aside, he was a champion, and I just think the world of what he did, how he inspired so many young men across.
You were in what grade were you in camp?
I guess I was probably like 7th, 8th grade, maybe.
So, and you still remember that story like it was yesterday.
He inspired me to keep trying. There's one thing about Jim Noble that I do. I don't care how tough it gets. I don't quit. So.
Right.
Even one summer, I went out and sold books in Oklahoma. I wanted to quit like the first minute I was there, and I said, "Well, no, I'm gonna stick it out." And I stayed the whole summer. One of those, Bible book salesman people, And if something's not working, I know it's not. I can't. There's nobody can turn it off.
Right.
I'll change it, but I don't quit. And I think that's what he was talking. And maybe he encouraged me to do that. I also had a JV. Varsity middle school. Well, now we call it junior high at the time. My 9th grade football coach, Italian guy, and he's still a decent, awesome friend, and he's always speaking to our life. And he was probably about 5'3" or 4", and coaching Yoda, and he would take us to the side of the back behind the cafeteria, and there was a steep hill, and he would say, "We're going to the hill," and I hated that, and he pushed us, and at the time, you weren't really fond of how well he pushed you, but looking back, he's one of my favorite coaches because he had us dig deep inside ourselves and find out what we're made of. And he still calls me every year to come up and teach Sunday school class for his adult class for my home church. And I go, and my original attorney from the restaurant in High Point was there, and he just inspired me because he pushed me to find out what I was made out of. And coaches make a huge impact on young men growing up. And
that's right. Well, Billy Graham talks about there's coaches make more of an impact on young people than anybody else, even pastors, even preachers.
Sometimes more than the parents.
Yeah, because we'll listen to our coaches more than we'll listen to our parents, right? Our coaches could say, now, when you get up in the morning, you need to make your bed, brush your teeth, eat your breakfast, and eat your vegetables, and you go home and you do it. And your mother's like, who told you to do that? Well, Coach Smith said, and they're like, you're going to listen to a coach? Yes, that's the way it is. It's for whatever reason. That's why I really value. I think there's an advantage to having grown up playing a team sport. And I know that sounds self-serving, but what do you look for in some key employees, in terms of their backgrounds?
Well, before I go there, I will say this: we need to go back to the place that we also learn how to lose. Everybody didn't get a trophy in life. And there is something to be said for learning to grow your team and winning and everybody can't win. But sometimes we're so afraid for our kids, we don't want them to lose, and we don't know what want them to feel like when you do have failures. But failures is what make you. So when we look at folks that we are talking to, and particularly from leadership positions, we're looking for some that intrinsically have the same core values that we do. One of the top core values we have is we honor families, and in the restaurant industry, it's really not always thought of that way. And a lot of times people work in leadership jobs, particularly when the going gets rough, and could be working 70, 80 hours a week. That'll wreck most any family. So we pull that back. We don't want that to happen. If your kid's playing somewhere, we're working, get yourself covered, but go be with your kids, go be what they're doing, and be with your family, take care of your family.
Right.
We look for people that have those core values when they come on board, and we don't hold it when we first sit down and talk to them. We bring that, we have a sheet out, we put it on the table, say this is who we are, and this is what we do, and if this fits what you like, this is a good place for you to come. But it's like in High Point University, the president there is a good friend, Nito Cobain. And he has all these parents, but 15,000 kids apply every year. He said, only 1,500 are going to get in. He said, but we're about faith, family, and a country. And if that's not you, this is probably not the right school for you to come to. And I think you must always be honest with anyone we're talking to. If you're going to join this organization, you may be talented, but if you're not going to really fit in and pass the happy test, is what we say. If you can't pass the happy test, it's not a place for you to work. And when that culture becomes alive in your organization, then everybody is, as a culture police, trying to make sure that we have nobody comes in and breaks it down. And usually that person says, this ain't for me. So
that's right. I love that.
We look for somebody that has the same kind of values as we do. Someone who's coachable. It doesn't have to always be the most talented person in the world. In fact, I'd rather find someone that wants to grow or doesn't have to unlearn a lot of things about food that we need to retrain them on. So
how do you find that out in an interview? How do you find out that in the recruiting process, if they are coachable?
If they're coachable, you may get a hint of it, but I will say this, Coach, but you never know until they finally come to work.
Right.
You never nailing it, and you never really know until like 69 days in. And so we take a 69-day review, say how we doing, how you getting there, and if it's not working, we'll give them every opportunity to bring it together, and we'll say, man, this ain't looking, this ain't what. And if you don't give them expectations, you can't hold them to it. So we give them expectations. This is what we expect. This is what we're looking for in this position. We have job descriptions, responsibilities, and all that stuff, and then we hold them accountable to it. And if you don't, then you always you have a disjointed team.
That's right.
Everybody on the starting five goes out there and they want to play their own game. They don't want to play with everybody else. Well, you may have the best talented guys out there, but you're not going to win any games like that.
That's right. And then your best players don't want to play with these weak links. Nick Saban talks about A players don't want to be around C players, and C players don't want to be around A players. Because C players don't want to get exposed, and A players want to win. They don't want to be around C players. Yeah. Tell me, what's the hardest thing about the restaurant business? And if somebody is listening or watching this podcast, what advice would you give them?
Well, I would say the most important thing is the personality of the restaurant itself, or the spirit of a restaurant, which is like the culture of the restaurant. If the head's not walking it, the rest of them may not. And really understanding that we're in servitude, we're going to take care of people's and their desires and treat people that are coming in the best way we can, make them feel like they're home.
Right.
I don't have any high-end restaurants. That's all I used to have was high-end white tablecloth. And when Noble's closed, I already changed Winston to more like a Rooster's, because that was an initial intent. And Rooster South Park and all the Roosters that we have are all meant to be high-quality food, but approachable, non-pretentious. We're not snooty about what we're doing. And, the higher the restaurant check average goes, the snooty the customers get sometimes too, because they're all expecting, whatever. And and barbecue, smoke, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. They just love being there, and it is all walks of life that come in there. And we still have our standards. We push hard. I mean, our goal at Noble Smokes to be among the best barbecue restaurant, one of the best in the Southeast. We buy the best meat we can. It's not the cheapest one.
Right. No, it's not.
But it's high quality. I mean, the beef is all prime, Creekstone. The pork is like 2 or 3 times more expensive than regular pork that most barbecue restaurants do, but it makes a difference in what you buy. I can't make chicken salad out of chicken poop, so I got to buy the best thing I can, the best product I can, and then I don't want to mess it up and booger it up too much. I want the food to be the food.
Right.
But
right.
having people that feel the same and building community that in turn makes our customer feel like they're home. And Maya Angelou is the one that coined this phrase, and now a lot of leadership people are using it. But it's not what you do to people; it's how you make them feel that makes them come back. It's not what you do for them; it's how you make them feel.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's what I was thinking about when Dean Smith said to you as a 7th, 8th grader that your effort, he admired your effort. So he made you feel good about yourself, even though you weren't the most talented player. He found something in you to compliment. And Dean Smith used to say to me when I was coaching at North Carolina, he would say, praise the actions you want repeated. And that's such a great lesson because for a while I was a find the flaw kind of coach. I was one that said, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, as opposed to, hey, thank you for showing up on time with a great attitude.
Yep.
Simple. What advice would you give your younger self in your early 20s, 25? What advice would you give yourself now?
Well, when we had Crazy Zach's, we had the old man, we called him. It was him and his son, and they all had the old farmers market out there, and then 3 of us who were pikers at state. One thing he did is I learned a lot what to do and what not to do by watching this guy, because he did a lot of stuff that was a little rough. We didn't do that, but we knew that that's not how I want to live my life. But I learned one thing from him is that go give it a shot. You can't be risk adverse in life and ever really achieve a lot. You're going to have to be willing to put it on the line and say, I'm going after this and give it everything you got. And if you fall down, you just, John Maxwell said one time, and I think it was during COVID, we're not down. We're either up or we're getting up, but we're not down. And
we're either up or we're getting up. I love that.
Isn't that cool?
Yes. So I studied John Maxwell's class. I'm a certified John Maxwell facilitator. So I admire everything that he's written. And so it's cool that you quote him. Yeah.
But to go after it, to be in the restaurant business, or any business really, you're going to take risk. And if for a lot of times you ask the CFO, they don't want to do anything. I've got a great CFO that understands there's risk and there's reward. And he said to me one time, this is Barry, he says, there's the only thing more expensive than no vision. There's the only one thing more expensive than vision, and that's no vision.
Yeah.
And we truly have a vision. We started plotting our stuff out through a StratUps process, after Tom Patterson process, and our buddy Jason Baker helps us with that. And we plan our growth. We said, all right, this is where we're going to be in 5 years. Now, if you haven't done that, you may get part of the way there, or you may think, well, maybe we'll do that. But until you make plans on what you're doing, if I could go back, I'd make more concrete plans on how my growth is going to be.
Yeah.
And I thought when I moved back, I was going to open the first restaurant in California, and then it was not a good time for my sister and her husband. So I ended up saying, well, I told the guys I'm leaving, so I'm leaving. I'd gone to Napa Valley, and I saw Food and Wine together, which I'd been studying, being paired together on a table. And I said, this is me. That's what I'm going to do. So I came back, told the guys in Clemson, I'm out of here in December. I'm leaving. I'm going to go in the restaurant business. They said, we're going to buy you out. I said, good, I'm gone. And then it turned out I couldn't go to California. It was not a good time. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I stayed here. But I ended up going back to my hometown. I thought I'd be there 5 years and I'd go someplace else, and end up being there 20-some years. And we still have several operations up in Winston-Salem right now. So one of the Roosters up there is like 33 years old. But just planning your growth, and the Patterson process is if you plan your work and work your plan will work. So we started planning, we're going to have this many restaurants at this point in time, but there's our core values are the rails that keep us in. We're going to do healthy growth. If it's not healthy, we can't go.
Right.
We're going to have great people. We're going to do all the things that we want to do. Are we going to take care of people? What does the ideal team player look like? That kind of thing.
Right.
So I'd probably go back and try to know more about that than I did. I was an industrial engineer at NC State. I was going to go it was a furniture program, furniture manufacturing and management. And I got out of school finally after we opened Crazy Zach's, about a year into it. And I went on the road selling furniture like my dad did. And after about 5 months, I said, this ain't for me. And we were just getting ready to open North Myrtle Beach. I said, I'm going back to the bar business, which sort of elongated my playing life, by goofing off, not really being serious about things. I went in business for I've never, my son asked me one time, have you ever been fired? I said, well, no, I've never worked for anybody. I've always worked for myself. But I've almost wanted to fire myself before. So I hold myself to the same standards or higher than I do my staff. But I would probably know more about leadership for sure. I'd have studied more. It wasn't until the mid 90s or late 90s we started studying John Maxwell and other leadership principles, which will propel you. The law of the lid with John Maxwell is, if you're a 6, you ain't going to hire no 7s, 8s, and 9s. You're going to hire 4s, 5s, and maybe a 6. Right. So you have to the person in leadership has to grow as a leader himself.
That's right.
Other people up.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Those principles back then, it probably made a big difference.
One of the biggest problems with founders, and owners and entrepreneurs is scaling, right? Learning to hire, delegate, trust, empower. You're talking, how many restaurants do you have?
We have about 15 or 16 operations. One of them is a wholesale bakery that sells to ourselves. And I've got some retail shops, like there's a bakery at Copan in South Park. We've got the little French bakery in Winston-Salem as well. These are like cafes. The one that was going in the bowl at Valentine will be more like a brasserie with a dinner menu. Because in bakeries, about 5 o'clock, they close and go home. But we're leaving dinner on the table, man. So we're going to push the envelope on this next one, this third one, and it's going to have dinner. And then we're going to do one in Davidson. Right. We don't have a full-scale kitchen with rotisserie and all this stuff.
Well, I'm excited about your move into Davidson, because I told you I'm in Mooresville, and we go to Davidson a lot. Matter of fact, my wife and I got going there this afternoon, and we're excited about Roosters coming north and Copan. Question, though, especially
in scale as a leader. Well, it's partly. I'll say something. You said something about founders and visionaries. A lot of times they don't make the best CEOs.
Right.
And when I heard about Danny Meyer in New York, the Union Square Hospitality Group, he hired a CEO because he was, for many years, like I've been. I go, wait a minute. If I go back maybe 10, 15 years and still do what I do, and I like to do best, the vision, the menus, the food, the wine, what does a place look like, working with the architect, working in design, and look at the new projects and growth. That's my favorite thing. We have now like a C-suite, which I never really know much about this until as we've grown, which is your executive suite team, like
right.
CEO, CFO, COO is a chief operating, chief culinary. Now we have chief marketing. That is a group. That group is the business that runs the restaurant. They're not running restaurants. They run the business that runs the restaurant.
Right.
That part I'm learning to delegate and step away from that. Yet watching it, overseeing it as the founder, and then setting up succession plans for myself. I'm just turned 70 this year.
Did you really?
Yeah, and
wow.
I'm like, somebody came and was having a party. They said, Jimmy, I was on a Zoom call and I was walking in. I was going to go to the cellar and finish my call. There was a bunch of people in there, and as a friend came and said, hey, we're having a birthday party for my mom. She just turned 70. I said, well, let me finish this call. I'll be right back. And I walked in the other room. I said, my goodness, that's old. I said, wait a minute, I just turned 70. I was thinking, wow, she's old. But I just started that myself. But, somewhere down the road, I'll probably, slow down. I'll never probably sit at home or just sit around somewhere. I like to fly fish a lot, so I like to do more of that.
Oh, you do? Where do you fly fish?
I in the mountains, and then mostly in like Tennessee and the Watauga and the Holston River.
Yeah, I like to fly fish. We'll have to do that sometime.
I would love that.
Question, I had this conversation with myself on a walk today. I feel like I'm 63. And I've had this conversation with Mr. Richardson, Jerry Richardson, when I got fired at North Carolina. I was about 42. And he said the 40s was his best decade because he had experience and the energy. And on my walk today, I feel like my 60s are going to be my best decade. What was your best decade?
Probably the last 5 years have been probably most productive. Even in the midst of COVID, we've grown from at the beginning of 19, we had 4 operations. And in the 19, we opened up Smoke and Bosses. And then we saw growth potential in Roosters and all that. And my wife told me, which, she used to say, when are you going to slow down? I said, well, I'm not really ready yet. But she said, well, she just read something that men's best productive years are their 70s and their 80s and then their 60s. So I'm looking forward to what's available to us as we still get older. And
Why do you think that is?
You've gotten wise enough to not be so stupid.
That sounds like a Yogi Berra quote. I've gotten wise enough not to be so stupid. One of my clients today, who's 86, who attended NC State for 2 years, and then he got smart and went to UNC. But he's 86. He said the difference between wisdom and knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put a tomato on a fruit salad.
That's a good one.
I know you'd appreciate that.
The younger you are, you think you know everything, and the older you get, you realize you don't know so much. And like Fred Sanford used to say, "You don't get to be old being no fool." So
you just quoted Fred Sanford. That's the first. That's the first on this show.
Oh, he's my hero. He was hilarious. He makes me laugh. Sometimes my son and I'll just sit there and watch 4 or 5 episodes because he's just hilarious.
Here I come, Elizabeth. All right, Jim. I could go on, and you and I'd like to go fly fishing with you. I've just invited myself. A couple things. What is one question I should have asked that I didn't?
Well, I will answer one that you could have asked about what really lights my fire. And it's probably like someone brought the hope of the gospel to me. And faith is a substance of things hoped for. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is a substance of things. That word hope doesn't mean wishful thinking like we think it does. It means a joyful, intense expectation of good. Faith ignites an expectation of good. And when someone brought that to me, we realized that you'll receive from God what you believe him for. And the problem is we don't believe him how really good he really is. We don't see him that good. And when Jesus became sin for us who knew no sin, that we would become the righteousness of God. He's made us the righteousness of God. And we'll say, no, I'm just an old sinner saved by grace. No, you're the one or the other. You're an old sinner. You're saved by grace. And when you're saved by grace, you are the righteousness of God. And he makes you as righteous as himself so that he can use us to co-labor with him to change this world around us and go take hope and expectation of good to folks who think they have no hope. And at the Dream Center, we used to say, we give hope to the hopeless. And people say, you make it sound like the hopeless. Well, if you don't know the hope of the gospel, you are hopeless, without hope. But no one's without hope. And I'd probably be the thing that probably really just, I think that one of the things that I was born for, to just encourage people to trust God. And we are radical believers. If Jesus said do it, that's what we should be doing. And I'm not really in any denomination. Our church is non-denomination. We just believe what the Bible says and we go do it. And I don't mean taking a scripture out of text, but you got to come some Sunday just see what we do. But we just tell people, hey, don't give up, don't quit, we go back uptown and we bus people out to the Dream Center on Freedom Drive across from Smoke and just encourage people to trust God and change your life. So it changed mine.
What church do you go to, Jim?
The church I pastor, it's the Dream Center Church.
Dream Center Church. What's next for Jim Noble and your restaurants? And with that, what's the best way for people that are watching this show that may not be from the Charlotte area to help sponsor, support your nonprofit? You
can go to any of the restaurants and get to the ministry, but on the there's a footer. It shows all the entities, including the ministries and the church, the Dream Center. But all the restaurants now are doing what's called 10 million meals to go, where you can help us feed a meal. We figured out since we opened in '83 until last year, we probably fed in our restaurants 10 million people over those years. And since 2001, when we began to do outreach and feed the poor or any of those in need, we've done about 1 million meals. So we said, we're going to do a campaign to feed 10 million more meals to go to those in need. So we're making it available. So anytime you come to any of our restaurants, you may not agree with all of our doctrine, the doctrine of Christ, but most everybody wants to help those in need. So you can jump in and help us feed somebody. It makes a difference in someone's life. And we go out, like tonight, Friday night, we'll be going out in Uptown. We've been doing this for 13 years this month. And every Friday night we go out and do street ministry. We don't carry tracts. We don't get preach to people. We just take 240 of our world famous Charlotte Mecklenburg Dream Center chili cheese dogs. And we just open up conversations for prayer, invitation. What can we do to help you? And we just look for those that are hurting and down and out and just say, hey, what can we do to help you? It's a wild thing.
World famous chili cheese dogs, right?
World famous Charlotte Mecklenburg. It used to be soon to be world famous, but we dropped the soon to be because we think now it's world famous.
Well, Jim, thank you for joining us today and sharing your Rebound story. It's really been a lot of fun having you on the show.
And I'll say one more thing. You can't do this by yourself. I have a great wife that stands behind me and sometimes wonders, what are you doing next? I'm like, when do you got to stop? I'm like, but I couldn't do it without a wife, and we stand side by side together, my kids and my family. That mean everything to me. So
100%.
Kudos to Karen. So
leadership is a learned behavior. We all lead in some way, shape, or form. We all deal with adversity. And when you do, I challenge you to rebound. I challenge you to learn and grow. If you'd like to contact me about executive coaching, workshops, or giving a keynote talk, you can reach me at dohertycoaching.com. That's DOHERTY coaching.com. Thanks for tuning in.